My name is Brooke. I'm 34 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed my husband's family accepted me. Right now, I'm standing in front of my bathroom mirror, carefully covering a bruise with concealer, while remembering the elegant anniversary party that was supposed to celebrate 5 years of marriage. That night changed everything. One phone call turned their sneers into shock. Before I share what happened at that party, tell me where you're watching from. Please hit subscribe. If you've ever felt powerless in your own home because what I'm about to tell you might just give you the courage you need. I met Marcus when I was 27 at a charity gala in Chicago. He was 36, tall, confident, and had this way of making everyone in the room gravitate toward him. He owned a successful real estate development company and came from what people called an important family. His father, Richard, was a federal judge. His mother, Eleanor, came from old railroad money. His brother Daniel worked as a corporate lawyer at one of the most prestigious firms in the city, and his sister Victoria had married a state senator. Our courtship felt like something out of a movie. Marcus would send flowers to my office every Monday just because he wanted me to start the week with a smile. He took me on surprise weekend trips to Napa Valley, where we would spend entire afternoons tasting wine and talking about our dreams. He would show up at my apartment after I'd had a bad day at work with my favorite Thai food and just hold me while I vented about my boss. I should have noticed the early warning signs, but they came wrapped in such beautiful packages. When he suggested I wear a different dress to his firm's holiday party, because the one I chose might give the wrong impression, I thought he was protecting me from judgment. When he mentioned that my best friend Sarah seemed to have a negative influence on me, always filling my head with career ambitions, instead of focusing on what really mattered, I thought he was looking out for my happiness. When he pointed out that I had gained a few pounds and offered to hire me a personal trainer, I thought he cared about my health. I was working as a marketing director at a tech startup when we got married. I loved my job, loved the challenge of building something from nothing, loved my team, and the late nights we spent brainstorming campaigns over pizza and energy drinks. But 3 months after our wedding, Marcus suggested I quit. We were trying to start a family, he said, and the stress of my demanding job couldn't be good for conception. Besides, his income was more than enough for both of us, and wouldn't it be wonderful to have time to decorate our new house properly? To be available for all the charity events his mother organized, to really invest in being a wife. The house he bought us in Winnetka was stunning. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a kitchen that belonged in a magazine, and a garden that bloomed with roses every spring. From the outside, it looked like paradise. But inside those perfectly painted walls, I started to disappear. My friends stopped calling after too many declined invitations. Marcus always had something planned on the nights they wanted to meet up, or he would mention how those friendships were holding me back from growing into the woman I was meant to be. Family dinners at his parents' estate in Lake Forest became exercises in subtle humiliation. Eleanor would ask about my family in front of guests, making sure everyone knew my father worked as an electrician and my mother taught elementary school. She would laugh her tinkling laugh and say things like, "Brooke comes from such humble beginnings, we're helping her adjust to our way of life." Victoria would chime in with stories about her time at Yale, always finding ways to mention that I had gone to a state school. Even my degree in marketing became a source of amusement. Marketing, how modern Eleanor would say, as if I had majored in something quaint and unnecessary. The fertility struggle started a year into our marriage. Every month that passed without a positive pregnancy test became another weapon in Marcus's arsenal. He would come home from work and ask if I had any good news, and when I shook my head, he would sigh and pour himself a scotch. "You're 32 now, Brooke," he would say. "The clock is ticking. Maybe if you were less stressed, if you exercised more, if you ate better, if you were more like Victoria when she conceived." The drinking started gradually. 1 scotch became 3. He would come home later smelling like whiskey and expensive perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked about it, he would turn it around on me. "You're being paranoid, Brooke. This is what your insecurity does. It makes you see problems where there aren't any. Maybe if you were more confident, more secure in yourself, you wouldn't need to interrogate me every time I work late." His business had been expanding rapidly, taking on bigger projects, more prestigious clients. The stress showed in the lines around his eyes, in the way his jaw clenched when his phone rang, in the force he used when he closed doors. I became skilled at reading his moods, knowing when to stay silent, when to offer comfort, when to disappear into another room. I learned to have dinner ready exactly when he wanted it, to keep the house exactly as he preferred it, to dress exactly as he expected me to dress. But nothing was ever quite right. The chicken was too dry. The living room pillows weren't fluffed properly. My lipstick was too bright for a woman my age. My conversation at his business dinners was either too quiet or too animated. I couldn't win because the game was designed for me to lose, and I was only just beginning to understand that. The morning of our 5th anniversary party started differently. Marcus woke me with breakfast in bed, something he hadn't done since our honeymoon. Fresh strawberries, Belgian waffles, champagne mixed with orange juice and crystal flutes. He sat on the edge of our bed and watched me eat, his hand gentle on my knee, his smile reaching his eyes for the first time in months. "I bought you something," he said, pulling out a velvet box from his jacket pocket. Inside was a diamond bracelet that must have cost more than most people's cars. Each stone caught the morning light streaming through our bedroom windows, throwing tiny rainbows across the walls. "I want everyone to see how much I treasure you," he said, clasping it around my wrist. "Tonight is important, Brooke. Important clients, important connections. I need you to be perfect." The party was being held at his parents' estate, a massive colonial mansion that had been in Eleanor's family for 3 generations. 200 guests were expected, a mix of judges, politicians, business moguls, and what Eleanor called the right people. I spent the morning at the house while Marcus went to his office to handle some last-minute business. I chose the burgundy dress he had approved the week before, the one that was elegant enough for his mother's taste, but not so striking that it would draw attention away from Victoria, who always needed to be the most beautiful woman in any room. I did my own makeup, having learned that professional makeup artists tended to overdo it, according to Marcus. Foundation to even out my skin, concealer to hide the circles under my eyes from another sleepless night, mascara that was waterproof in case Eleanor made me cry again, lipstick in a shade Marcus deemed appropriate for a woman of my standing. I styled my hair in a low chignon classic and understated the way his mother wore hers to court events. The drive to Lake Forest took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. Marcus was on his phone the entire time, barking orders at someone about a property inspection that had gone wrong. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and I knew better than to try to calm him down when he was in this state. I sat quietly watching the suburbs give way to the manicured lawns and gated driveways of the North Shore elite. The estate looked magical in the early evening light. White lights had been strung through all the trees lining the circular driveway. A string quartet was playing on the terrace, their music floating through the air like expensive perfume. Valets in crisp uniforms were taking keys from guests arriving in Mercedes and BMWs and Bentleys. Everything was perfect, exactly as Eleanor demanded it to be. She greeted us at the door, her silver hair styled in an elaborate updo, her navy dress clearly couture. "Brooke, darling," she said, air-kissing my cheeks. "That's quite a brave choice of color for your figure. But then you always have been adventurous with your fashion choices." She turned to Marcus, and her face transformed genuine warmth, replacing the ice. "My wonderful son," she said, touching his face with real affection. The house was filled with people I had learned to recognize over the years. Senator Williams was holding court near the bar, his booming laugh echoing off the marble floors. Judge Patterson and his wife were admiring Eleanor's latest art acquisition, a painting that cost more than most people's houses. The CEO of Marcus's biggest client was deep in conversation with Richard about some upcoming legislation that would affect commercial development. I moved through the crowd, playing my role perfectly. Yes, Marcus and I were so happy. No news on the baby front yet, but we were hopeful. The house was wonderful, thank you for asking. Eleanor had been so helpful with decorating advice. I smiled, I nodded, I laughed at the right moments. I asked about children and grandchildren and recent vacations to places I would never see. James Marcus's business partner found me near the dessert table with his wife, Catherine. She was different from the other wives, something I had noticed from the first time we met. While the others talked about shopping and spa treatments, Catherine had an intensity about her, an intelligence that she didn't try to hide behind vapid smiles. "You look beautiful tonight, Brooke," she said, but there was something in her eyes that looked like concern. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Before I could answer with my practiced response, Victoria appeared at my elbow. She was holding court with 3 of her society friends' women who lunched at the same clubs and sent their children to the same preparatory schools. "Oh, Brooke," she said, her voice carrying that false sweetness I had come to dread, "I was just telling Madison about your struggles with fertility. Such a shame, especially at your age. Have you considered that maybe it's nature's way of saying something?" Her friends tittered behind manicured hands, and I felt the familiar burn of humiliation creeping up my neck. Catherine stepped forward, but I touched her arm gently, letting her know I was fine. I had learned to endure Victoria's cruelty without flinching. It was easier than fighting back and dealing with Marcus's anger later. Daniel appeared with his wife Patricia, both of them already several drinks in. Patricia looked at me with something that might have been pity or might have been disgust. "You should smile more, Brooke," she said. "You look so tense. This is a party after all. Your anniversary party. Though I suppose 5 years feels like much longer when you're trying so hard to fit in." Marcus was across the room, surrounded by admirers, as he told some story about a recent business triumph. He was in his element, gesturing broadly, his laugh carrying over the quartet's music. He caught my eye and raised his glass to me, and for a moment I remembered why I had fallen in love with him. In moments like these, when he was charming and successful, and chose to acknowledge me, I could almost forget the rest. As the evening wore on, Marcus drank more. His voice got louder, his gestures more animated. I watched him throw his arm around Senator Williams's shoulders, watched him order another round for a group of potential investors, watched him become the version of himself that appeared when Scotch loosened his control. This was the dangerous time when his mood could shift without warning, when a wrong word or look could transform him into someone I feared. At 9 o'clock, he stood up to give a speech about our marriage. The room fell silent as he raised his glass, his face flushed with alcohol and attention. 5 years ago, he began, "I married this woman and it was the best decision of my life." He went on to describe our perfect union, our perfect home, our perfect future. The crowd smiled and nodded, raising their glasses to toast us. They saw what he wanted them to see: a successful man with a devoted wife, living the American dream in all its glossy perfection. I stood beside him, my smile never wavering, my hand steady on his arm. This was my job, to be the supporting actress in the performance of his life. Around us, people murmured about what a beautiful couple we were, how lucky I was to have married so well, how proud his parents must be. If anyone noticed that my smile didn't reach my eyes, or that Marcus's grip on my waist was too tight to be affectionate, they didn't mention it. Everything changed at 9:15. I had excused myself to get some air, stepping out onto the terrace that overlooked Eleanor's prized garden. The roses were in full bloom, their perfume heavy in the humid evening air. That's where I found her, Marcus's client's wife, crying behind a trellis of climbing jasmine. Her name was Amanda, and she was 28 years old, married to one of the development firm's biggest clients for just 2 years. Her mascara had run, leaving dark tracks down her cheeks, and she was shaking. When she saw me, she tried to compose herself, dabbing at her eyes with a cocktail napkin. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't mean for anyone to see me like this." I sat down beside her on the stone bench, remembering my own tears in gardens like this one. "What happened?" I asked, though part of me already knew. The look in her eyes was too familiar, the way she wrapped her arms around herself too recognizable. "Your husband," she whispered, and my stomach dropped. "Last week, when Robert was in Boston for a conference. Marcus asked me to come to his office to discuss the Valencia project. He said Robert had asked him to get my input on the design. But when I got there, she couldn't finish, but she didn't need to. I knew exactly what had happened in that office." He cornered me against his desk. She continued, her voice barely audible over the quartet's distant music. "He said things about how Robert didn't appreciate me, how he could take better care of me. When I tried to leave, he grabbed my wrist. He only let go when his secretary knocked on the door. I sat there feeling the world tilt off its axis. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. Somewhere deep down I had known. The late nights, the perfume, the way certain women looked at me with pity at these events. But hearing it confirmed hearing the pain in Amanda's voice, something inside me finally cracked. I helped Amanda clean up her face, gave her my concealer to cover the redness around her eyes. I told her to find Robert and leave quietly to say she had a migraine if anyone asked. Then I went to find my husband. Marcus was in Richard's study with Daniel and two other men I didn't recognize. They were smoking cigars, the thick smoke creating a haze in the wood-paneled room. The men looked up when I entered, surprise clear on their faces. Wives didn't interrupt these gatherings. Marcus. I need to speak with you, I said, keeping my voice level. Privately. He looked at me with irritation that quickly transformed into rage. Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me, he said, his tone light, but his eyes dark. It seems my wife has forgotten her manners. He grabbed my arm above the elbow, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise, and steered me into the hallway. Once the door closed behind us, his mask dropped completely. What the hell do you think you're doing? He hissed. Those are important clients in there. Amanda Morrison told me what you did, I said, meeting his eyes for the first time in months without looking away. In your office last week. How many others have there been, Marcus? His face went from red to purple, a vein throbbing in his temple that I had learned to fear. How dare you, he said, his voice low and dangerous. How dare you question me in my family's home in front of my father's guests on our anniversary? I deserve the truth, I said, and even I was surprised by the steadiness of my voice. After everything I've given up for you, I deserve at least that. The slap came so fast, I didn't have time to brace for it. His open palm connected with my cheek, with enough force to snap my head to the side. I stumbled backward, my head hitting the corner of a heavy gilt frame on the wall. I felt the sharp pain, felt something warm trickling down my neck, tasted copper in my mouth where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. Look what you made me do, Marcus said, and there was something almost bored in his tone, as if this was just another disappointment I had caused. Clean yourself up. We have guests. He walked back into the study, closing the door behind him, leaving me alone in the hallway with my vision blurring and my ears ringing. I touched my lip and my fingers came away red. The diamond bracelet he had given me that morning caught the light, mocking me with its brilliance. I stumbled toward the powder room, but Eleanor appeared in the hallway before I could reach it. She took in my face, the blood on my lip, the way I was holding the wall for support. For a moment I thought I saw something human flicker in her eyes. Then it was gone. Marriage requires sacrifice, dear, she said, her voice as cold as her diamonds. Perhaps if you learned to hold your tongue, you wouldn't put Marcus in these difficult positions. Fix your makeup. You're embarrassing yourself. Victoria and Daniel emerged from the parlor, drawn by the sound of voices. They both saw my face, saw the blood, saw the way I was shaking. Victoria actually laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the marble floors. God save you if you think anyone here will take your side, she said. You're nothing without this family, Brooke. Nothing. Daniel shook his head with mock sympathy. You knew what this family was when you married in, he said. You wanted the money, the status, the life. This is the price. Patricia stood in the doorway to the parlor, and for a moment our eyes met. I saw recognition there, maybe even empathy. Then she turned away, disappearing back into the party, as if she had seen nothing. I made it to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. In the mirror, I looked like a stranger. My lip was split and swelling. My cheek was already bruising, a purple shadow spreading across my cheekbone. My carefully styled hair had come loose, hanging in limp strands around my face. Blood had dripped onto the burgundy dress, dark spots on dark fabric, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. I stood there staring at my reflection and felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Rage. Pure, clean rage that burned through the fear and shame and self-doubt. 5 years of shrinking myself, of apologizing for existing, of believing that I deserved this treatment. 5 years of isolation and humiliation and slow erosion of my spirit. And for what? For a man who hit me in his parents' house while 200 guests celebrated our marriage in the next room. That's when I remembered Catherine's words from earlier in the evening and the business card she had pressed into my hand when we met by the dessert table. If you ever need anything, she had said, and there had been weight to those words that I only now understood. I pulled Catherine's business card from my purse with shaking hands. It wasn't the simple card I expected from a businessman's wife. Instead, it read, Catherine Chen Walsh, Attorney at Law, followed by specializations in family law, divorce proceedings, and asset protection. In the corner was a cell phone number with a note handwritten in pen. Available 24/7. I dialed the number, not caring that it was past 9:30 on a Saturday night. Catherine answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting for my call. Brooke, she said, and there was no surprise in her voice. Are you somewhere private? I'm in the bathroom, I whispered, checking that the door was still locked. He hit me. Catherine, in front of his family. They all saw and no one. I've been waiting for this call, she interrupted gently. Listen to me very carefully. I'm not just James's wife. I'm Illinois' top divorce attorney, and I've been documenting your situation for 2 years. My legs gave out and I sat down hard on the closed toilet seat. What do you mean James isn't just Marcus's business partner, she continued. He's also a licensed private investigator. We've been building a case, Brooke. We have recordings from tonight, photographs, witness statements. But that's not all. Do you remember your grandmother, Rose? My grandmother had died when I was 16, leaving behind memories of summer visits and sugar cookies and stories about her own struggles as a young wife in the 50s. She had mentioned leaving me something in her will, but my parents said it had all gone to medical bills. Your grandmother left you a trust fund, Catherine said. $2 million that was supposed to transfer to you when you turned 25. Marcus and his father, Richard, have been hiding it, keeping it tied up in legal procedures, hoping you'd never find out it existed. The room spun around me. $2 million. My grandmother had tried to protect me to give me independence, and they had stolen that from me too. But that's just the beginning, Catherine continued. Marcus has been having affairs with at least 3 women that we can prove. He's been using company funds to pay for apartments, gifts, trips. That's embezzlement and fraud. His father has been using his position as a judge to hide Marcus's crimes, which is judicial corruption. We have everything, Brooke. Banking records, emails, recorded conversations. Why didn't you tell me sooner, I asked, though I already knew the answer. Because you wouldn't have believed me. You needed to come to this decision yourself. But now that you have, we're going to destroy them. I have a team at the party right now. A photographer just captured your injuries from a hidden position. 3 servers saw Marcus hit you and are willing to testify. The security footage from the hallway has already been copied. In exactly 30 minutes, their entire world is going to collapse. What do I need to do? Clean yourself up as best you can. Put on fresh lipstick. Hold your head high. Walk back out to that party and let them see you refusing to break. When the authorities arrive, and they will arrive, you say nothing except that you want your lawyer. That's me. But Marcus will be in custody within the hour. I've already filed an emergency restraining order. The divorce papers are ready. Your grandmother's trust fund will be released by Monday morning. You're going to be free, Brooke. But first you need to walk back out there and show them that they didn't break you. I stood up on shaking legs and looked at myself in the mirror again. The woman staring back at me was battered but not broken. I cleaned the blood from my face, applied concealer to the worst of the bruising, fixed my lipstick with steady hands. I repinned my hair, straightened my dress, and took a deep breath. Before I hung up, Catherine added one more thing. In 15 minutes, check your phone. I'm sending you something that will help you face them. I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped back into the hallway. Eleanor was waiting, probably to make sure I hadn't escaped through a window. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. Don't touch me, I said, my voice carrying a strength I had forgotten I possessed. Your time is up. She blinked, surprised by my tone, but before she could respond, I walked past her toward the main parlor. The party was still in full swing. Marcus was at the bar, another scotch in his hand, laughing at something Senator Williams was saying. He saw me and his eyes narrowed, a clear warning to behave myself. My phone buzzed. The message from Catherine contained a single photo. It was a bank statement showing my grandmother's trust fund, now worth $3 million with interest, and a court order for its immediate release. At the bottom was a note. Your grandmother Rose wrote you a letter. It's been in the safety deposit box with the trust documents. It says, "My darling girl, never let anyone dim your light. You are stronger than you know." I looked up from my phone to find Marcus approaching, his face a mask of controlled fury. "We need to talk," he said, reaching for my arm. "No," I said loud enough for people nearby to hear. "We don't." The first sign that something was wrong came at 10:15 exactly. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the parlor, we could see a line of black SUVs pulling into the circular driveway. They weren't the kind of vehicles that usually attended Eleanor's parties. These had government plates and tinted windows that meant business. Marcus noticed them too, his grip on his Scotch glass tightening. His father Richard emerged from his study, drawn by the murmur of confused voices, as guests noticed the vehicles. "What's the meaning of this?" he demanded, as if his imperious tone could make federal agents disappear. The doorbell rang, which was strange because the door had been open all evening for guests. Eleanor's housekeeper answered it, and we could all hear the authoritative voice that followed. "Federal agents. We need to speak with Richard and Marcus Sterling immediately." The agents entered the parlor like a force of nature, their badges visible, their faces professional but determined. The lead agent was a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She looked directly at Richard. "Judge Sterling, I'm Special Agent Martinez with the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI. We have warrants to search your home, your office, and all electronic devices. We're also here to speak with your son Marcus regarding allegations of embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Phones appeared in hands as guests began recording, unable to resist documenting the downfall of one of Chicago's most prominent families. Richard's face went from red to white in seconds. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he said, his voice booming with the authority he used from the bench. "I'll have your badge for this. This is harassment entering my home during a private event." Agent Martinez didn't even blink. "Sir, I know exactly who you are. That's why we're here. We have evidence that you've been using your position to obstruct justice, hide financial crimes, and intimidate witnesses. I suggest you contact your attorney." Marcus dropped his glass. It shattered on the marble floor, scotch, spreading in an amber pool that looked like liquid gold in the light from the chandelier. He started backing toward the terrace doors, but two agents stepped forward to block his path. Eleanor found her voice shrill and panicked. "This is preposterous. We'll sue you for defamation for harassment. Do you know who our friends are? Senator Williams, tell them." But Senator Williams was already backing away, his political instincts for self-preservation kicking in. "I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding," he said, but his tone made it clear he wanted nothing to do with the situation. "I should be going. Early morning tomorrow." Other guests began following his lead, streaming toward the door, abandoning the Sterlings like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Judge Patterson looked particularly horrified, probably calculating how many of his own cases might be reviewed if Richard was really corrupt. Business associates were on their phones, likely calling their lawyers to review any contracts with Marcus's company. That's when Catherine appeared in the doorway with two Illinois State Police officers. She had changed from party guest to attorney, her entire demeanor shifting to one of professional competence. "Mr. Marcus Sterling," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "I'm representing Brooke Sterling in divorce proceedings. You're being served with an emergency restraining order. You are not to come within 500 feet of my client." She handed him the papers, which he took with numb fingers. "But there's more," she continued. "You're also being charged with assault and battery. We have multiple witnesses and security footage of you striking your wife this evening." Marcus's eyes found mine across the room, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear there. "You bitch," he snarled, starting toward me. "You planned this." The agents grabbed him before he could take more than 2 steps. His lunge at me in front of federal agents and a room full of witnesses was the final nail in his coffin. They pulled his arms behind his back, and I heard the click of handcuffs, a sound that was more beautiful than any music the quartet had played. "Mr. Sterling, you're under arrest for assault," one of the agents said. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The local news crews arrived then, someone having leaked the story. They set up on the lawn, their cameras capturing everything through the windows. Marcus being led away in handcuffs. Richard arguing with federal agents as they boxed up files from his study, Eleanor screaming about lawsuits and connections, while mascara ran down her face in black rivers. Catherine appeared at my side, along with James and 3 other people I didn't recognize. "These are my associates," she said. "We're getting you out of here safely. But first, there's something else you should know. We've been in contact with 2 other women who Marcus assaulted. They're willing to testify. Your husband is going away for a long time, Brooke." Victoria tried to approach me, her earlier smugness replaced with panic. "You can't do this to our family," she said. "Think about what you're destroying. The Sterling name, our reputation, everything our parents built." "Your family destroyed itself," I replied, finding my voice strong and clear. "I'm just refusing to be buried in the wreckage anymore." Her husband, the senator, was already on his phone with his press secretary, trying to get ahead of the story. I heard him saying something about having concerns about the Sterling family for some time, distancing himself from the scandal that would surely make headlines by morning. Daniel attempted one last play, approaching with his hands up in a gesture of peace. "Brooke, let's be reasonable," he said. "This is all a misunderstanding. We can work this out privately. Keep it in the family. Think about what you're throwing away. The money, the connections, the life you've built here." I looked at him, looked at him for the first time. He was scared. They all were. The empire they had built on intimidation and corruption was crumbling in real time, and they had no idea how to exist without it. "The life I built," I said, laughing for the first time in years. "You mean the prison you put me in, the isolation, the humiliation, the constant fear? I'm not throwing it away, Daniel. I'm escaping from it." Eleanor fainted then, or pretended to, falling dramatically to the floor. But unlike every other time she had commanded attention with her theatrical displays, no one rushed to help her. The guests who remained were too busy protecting themselves, deleting photos with the Sterlings from their social media, canceling upcoming plans, pretending they had never been close to the family at all. As Catherine led me toward the door, I took one last look at the destruction. Federal agents were carrying boxes of evidence from Richard's study. Marcus was being placed in a police car. His expensive suit wrinkled, his perfect image shattered. The estate that had seemed so imposing, so untouchable, now looked like what it really was, a house built on lies finally facing the truth. "Tomorrow," Catherine said as we reached her car, "the story will be everywhere. Chicago Tribune, Sun-Times, every local news station. You need to be prepared for that. But tonight you're safe. I have a secure location where you can stay, security to protect you, and a team ready to fight for everything you deserve." As we drove away, I saw the lights of the news vans in the rearview mirror, heard the distant sound of sirens bringing more law enforcement to the estate. The diamond bracelet on my wrist caught the streetlights as we passed, and I unclasped it, letting it fall to the floor of the car. I wouldn't need Marcus's gifts where I was going. For the first time in 5 years, I was free. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel suite downtown that Catherine had arranged. My phone had been turned off on her advice, but she brought me a tablet with the news already pulled up. The Chicago Tribune's headline read, "Federal Judge Richard Sterling arrested in corruption probe, son charged with assault and fraud." Below was a photo of Marcus being led away in handcuffs, his face twisted in rage. The story was everywhere. Every major news outlet in Illinois was covering it, and it was trending nationally on social media. Someone had leaked the security footage of Marcus hitting me, though my face was blurred for privacy. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. The Sterling family was being eviscerated in the court of public opinion. Richard had been suspended from the bench pending investigation. The FBI had found evidence of 20 years of taking bribes, fixing cases for wealthy friends, and using his position to threaten anyone who opposed his family's interests. The Judicial Review Board was calling for immediate disbarment, and criminal charges were being prepared that could result in 10 to 15 years in federal prison. Marcus's company was under federal investigation with all assets frozen. His clients were jumping ship, canceling contracts, and distancing themselves from the scandal. 3 more women had come forward overnight sharing their own stories of harassment and assault. The state attorney was building a case that would likely result in a minimum of 3 years in prison more if the financial crimes charges stuck. Eleanor's world had crumbled overnight. The charity board she sat on had called emergency meetings to remove her. The country club had suspended her membership. The society pages that had once featured her parties were now running exposés on the family's corruption. Her own family, the old money relatives she had always bragged about, released a statement distancing themselves from her and expressing shock at the allegations. Victoria's husband had filed for separation that morning, his political career hanging by a thread. His staff was in crisis mode, trying to salvage his reputation, but the photos of him at the party toasting with Richard just hours before the arrest were damaging. Victoria herself was being investigated for potential knowledge of the financial crimes, as she had been listed as a board member on several of Marcus's shell companies. Daniel's law firm had placed him on immediate administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Several of his cases were being reviewed for potential misconduct, especially those involving his father's court. His wife Patricia had been photographed leaving their house with suitcases, apparently heading to her parents' home in Michigan. But while their world crumbled, mine was rebuilding. Catherine had assembled a team of the best divorce attorneys in the city. My grandmother's trust fund had been released, all $3 million transferred to an account in my name alone. The letter my grandmother had left was in my hands, her handwriting still clear after all these years. My darling Brooke, it read. If you're reading this, then you're old enough to receive my gift to you. I know what it's like to be trapped in a marriage that dims your light. I stayed too long, lost too much of myself. This money is your freedom, your chance to never depend on anyone who doesn't deserve you. Be brave, my sweet girl. The world is waiting for you to shine. My phone, when I finally turned it on, had hundreds of messages. Old friends Marcus had driven away were reaching out, expressing support and anger that they hadn't known how bad things were. Sarah, my best friend who Marcus had convinced me was toxic, had left 5 voicemails, each one more tearful than the last, begging me to let her back into my life. My sister Emma had flown in from California and was waiting in the hotel lobby. When I saw her, I broke down for the first time since everything had happened. She held me while I sobbed, 5 years of suppressed tears finally finding release. She told me how she had suspected something was wrong, but hadn't known how to help when I kept insisting everything was perfect. My parents were on their way from Wisconsin, my mother having told her principal she had a family emergency. My father, the electrician Eleanor had mocked, had apparently told his boss that anyone who hurt his daughter would answer to him, badge or no badge. The unconditional love and support from my family, the people Marcus had taught me to be ashamed of, was overwhelming. Catherine arranged for me to see a therapist who specialized in domestic abuse survivors. Dr. Linda Garrett was a soft-spoken woman in her 60s who had herself survived an abusive marriage decades ago. In our first session, she told me something that changed everything. You're not starting over, Brooke. You're starting from experience. Every day you survived gives you strength for what comes next. Job offers began coming in from people who had heard my story. My old startup had a position that had been created specifically for me if I wanted it. Other companies reached out, impressed by my courage and wanting to support my fresh start. The marketing world I had loved and been forced to abandon was welcoming me back with open arms. I found an apartment in Lincoln Park, nothing like the mansion in Winnetka, but perfect for me. It had exposed brick walls and huge windows that let in streams of natural light. I could walk to coffee shops and bookstores, things Marcus had considered beneath us. I adopted a rescue cat named Luna, who had also escaped from a bad situation, and we healed together in our sunny apartment. The legal proceedings moved forward quickly. Marcus tried to fight the divorce at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. The affairs, the hidden assets, the assault, it all painted a picture that no judge could ignore. Catherine made sure I got everything I was entitled to, and more. The house in Winnetka would be sold, the proceeds split. Half of Marcus's legal assets, though diminished, were mine. Combined with my grandmother's trust, I had more than enough to start over. Marcus ended up pleading guilty to avoid a longer sentence. He got 3 years for assault and financial crimes, eligible for parole in 18 months with good behavior. But his reputation was destroyed forever. No one in Chicago's business community would touch him. The sterling name had become toxic. Richard's trial was longer and more complex. The depth of his corruption shocked even seasoned court watchers. He had taken bribes for 20 years, fixed cases, threatened witnesses, and used his position to build his family's empire. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, his legacy completely destroyed. The judgments he had made were being reviewed, some overturned justice finally being served to those he had wronged. 6 months have passed since that night at the anniversary party. I'm sitting in my new office, vice president of marketing at a tech startup that's developing apps to help domestic violence survivors find resources and support. It's work that matters, work that makes me feel like my experience can help others. My days are full now, but full of things I choose. Monday evenings, I attend a support group for domestic abuse survivors. We meet in a church basement, a circle of women who understand each other without explanation. Some are just leaving their situations terrified and uncertain. I tell them my story, show them that there's life, beautiful life on the other side of fear. Tuesday nights are for therapy with Dr. Garrett. We've worked through so much of the trauma, the gaslighting, the slow erosion of my self-worth that Marcus had orchestrated. I'm learning to trust my instincts again, to set boundaries, to recognize red flags that I had been taught to ignore. Wednesday afternoons. I volunteer at a women's shelter teaching job skills and helping with resume writing. The women there remind me of myself 5 years ago, talented and capable, but convinced they're worthless. Watching them rediscover their strength is like watching flowers bloom after a long winter. Weekends are for rebuilding the relationships Marcus stole from me. Sarah and I have lunch every Saturday, catching up on 5 lost years. My sister visits once a month and we explore Chicago like tourists, doing all the things Marcus considered beneath us. My parents come down for Sunday dinners in my apartment. My father fixing little things that don't really need fixing, my mother cooking too much food and insisting I need to eat more. I've started traveling solo, something Marcus never allowed. Last month I went to Paris, wandering the Louvre alone, sitting in cafes with a book, proving to myself that I can navigate the world without someone controlling every step. Next month I'm going to Thailand for a yoga retreat, something the old Brooke would have been too scared to attempt. Dating hasn't been easy. The first time a man raised his voice near me, not even at me but at a referee during a Bulls game on TV, I had a panic attack. But I'm working through it with Dr. Garrett, learning to distinguish between normal human emotions and dangerous rage. I've been on a few coffee dates, nothing serious. Just practice in remembering that not all men are Marcus. The legal victories have continued. Marcus was denied early parole after getting into a fight with another inmate. He has 2 more years to serve, 2 more years where I don't have to look over my shoulder. His letters to me are intercepted by Catherine's office, unread and returned. He has no power over me anymore. Richard's appeal was denied. He's serving his full sentence, and at 71 years old, he may never see freedom again. Eleanor is living with distant relatives in Florida, a shell of her former self. The estate was seized and sold at auction, the proceeds going to victims of Richard's corruption. I heard she works part-time at a grocery store, now the woman who once wouldn't acknowledge service workers, now dependent on minimum wage. Victoria's divorce was finalized, and she lost custody of her children. Her ex-husband got full custody after her involvement in the financial crimes was revealed. She's living in a studio apartment in Indiana, working as a receptionist at a dental office. The woman who once mocked my state school education now struggles to make rent. Daniel managed to avoid criminal charges, but his legal career is over. No firm will hire him, his reputation forever tainted by association. Last I heard, He was working as a paralegal in Milwaukee, starting over at 45. Patricia divorced him and took half of everything, which wasn't much after the legal fees. He actually sent me a letter of apology saying he understood now what it felt like to lose everything. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either. I started a foundation with part of my grandmother's money. The Rose Foundation provides emergency funds for women leaving abusive relationships. We cover security deposits, moving expenses, legal fees, all the practical barriers that keep women trapped. In 6 months, we've helped 43 women escape situations like mine. Each success story heals something in me. Catherine and I have become genuine friends. She told me the full story of why she and James helped me. Catherine's sister had been in an abusive marriage with a powerful man, but no one helped her. She didn't survive it. When Catherine saw the signs in me, she vowed not to let history repeat. She and James spent 2 years gathering evidence, waiting for the moment I'd be ready to leave. The women from the support group have become my chosen family. We celebrate each other's victories no matter how small. Getting through a day without crying, standing up to a manipulative ex, going on a first date, starting a new job. Each milestone is honored. We understand that healing isn't linear, that some days the trauma wins, but we keep showing up for each other. I've learned to recognize the warning signs I missed with Marcus. The love bombing at the beginning, the slow isolation from support systems, the criticism disguised as concern, the gradual erosion of boundaries, the cycle of abuse followed by grand gestures. I share these signs everywhere I can, hoping to save someone else from wasting 5 years of their life. My therapist says I have post-traumatic growth, the positive psychological changes that can come after trauma. I'm more empathetic, more resilient, more appreciative of simple freedoms. I can go to the grocery store without asking permission. I can wear what I want without criticism. I can have opinions without fear. These small liberties feel revolutionary. The deepest lesson has been learning that power isn't what Marcus had. Real power is the courage to leave, to speak truth, to rebuild from ashes. It's the strength to trust again, even when trust was weaponized against you. It's the grace to help others escape their own prisons. It's the wisdom to know that someone else's cruelty is not your burden to carry. I think about that night at the party sometimes. How Eleanor sneered, how Victoria laughed, how they all believed their money and connections made them untouchable. They were so confident in their power, so certain I would never fight back. They didn't understand that pushing someone to their breaking point doesn't always break them. Sometimes it forges them into something stronger. That phone call to Catherine changed everything. But the truth is, the change had already started. It started the moment Marcus's hand connected with my face, and instead of feeling shame, I felt rage. It started when I looked in that bathroom mirror and saw not a victim, but a survivor waiting to emerge. The phone call was just the key to a door I was finally ready to open. The message I want to leave with anyone watching who sees themselves in my story is this: it's never too late. Whether you've been married 5 years or 25 years, whether you have children or not, whether you have money or not, it's never too late to choose yourself. There are people waiting to help you, resources available, a life beyond what you can imagine from inside the prison of abuse. Your story doesn't end with someone else's cruelty. It begins the moment you decide you deserve better. The moment you make that phone call, send that text, pack that bag, walk out that door. It begins when you choose to believe that the voice telling you you're worthless is lying, that the person hurting you is the one who's broken, not you. If you're watching this and you're scared, I understand. I was terrified. But here's what I know now: the fear of leaving is nothing compared to the fear of staying and slowly disappearing. You are stronger than you know, more valuable than they've told you, more deserving of love than you've been shown. Thank you for listening to my story. If it helps even one person recognize the signs, make the call, or leave their situation, then every moment of pain was worth it. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline or local resources in your area. You don't have to do this alone. To those of you who have survived similar experiences, I see you, I believe you, and I'm proud of you. To those still trapped, there is hope, there is help, and there is life waiting for you on the other side of fear. Please share this story if you think it might help someone. Leave a comment if you've had similar experiences, or if you have resources to share with others. Like and subscribe to help these important stories reach more people who need to hear them. Together, we can break the silence that keeps so many trapped in abuse. Remember, you deserve love that doesn't hurt, respect that doesn't come with conditions, and a life where you can breathe freely. That's not too much to ask. That's the bare minimum. And you are worth so much more than the minimum. Thank you again for watching, and please take care of yourselves. Your story matters, your pain is valid, and your future is still unwritten. Make it beautiful.